This is our homily for Sunday, September 22nd, the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time. A young woman came to a priest for confession and said, "I have a sin of pride that I just can't get over, Father. When I look in the mirror, I can't help thinking I'm the prettiest girl in the world." "Oh, that isn't a sin," said the priest. "You just need glasses." The theme of our gospel today and of this homily could be summarized as, Jesus is asking us to think of ourselves less, as the woman in the joke needed to do. And note, it's not to think less of ourselves or put ourselves down, for we're made in the image of God and loved by God. But it means to think of ourselves less, as in, I don't have to be first all the time. I can think of others. Last week, we heard Jesus tell his disciples at Caesarea Philippi that he would suffer and die, but they couldn't get it. Today, we hear that Jesus left there, Caesarea Philippi, and began a journey through Galilee. He has started his final journey to Jerusalem. He was alone with his closest disciples, teaching them and explaining again, for the second of 3 times, that he was a Messiah who must suffer and die. But again, they didn't get it, and this time they were arguing over who would be the greatest in his kingdom. Look at what happens. First, Jesus sits with them. That's the formal position for teaching. This action says to them, "Listen up, I'm going to tell you something important." Then he calls a child, and it's important to know that the word used is the same word for either child or servant. A child or a servant were the most vulnerable. They had no rights. And then finally, notice, Jesus doesn't yell at them. He gives them cliff notes on how to be great. And I quote, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all." End quote. When we hear first and last, we think of waiting in line. This is more about putting the needs of others ahead of my own. It's being a servant of others. We need to be willing to serve in our relationships. In all situations we find ourselves, we need to be able to forgive, to dedicate ourselves to helping others. So the reflection I invite us to this week, as human beings, we have the drive for self-preservation, for being first, written into our DNA. Christ calls us to grow through life in being able to think of the other, to serve. Am I growing in my ability to think of myself less and leave room for others? In my family, in my workplace, with those who are less fortunate than I? How generous am I with my time, talent, and treasure to my faith community, to other worthwhile causes? Am I growing? A story is told about a monk who longed to see Jesus in person and who prayed every day that Jesus would appear to him. His habit was that each day he prepared a meal for the many hungry people who came to the gate of his monastery. Then, one day, as he was about to serve a meal to the hungry people, Jesus appeared to him at the kitchen. At the same moment, the bell at the gate rang, telling the monk that the hungry people had arrived. This was a real dilemma. Should he stay and speak with Jesus? Should he go and serve the hungry people? The bell rang again, and the monk quickly made up his mind. he hurried to the gate and served the meal he had prepared. When he had finished, he was saddened by the thought that he had turned his back on Jesus. When he returned to the kitchen, however, he found Jesus waiting for him. "Lord," he said, "I was afraid that you would have left when I went to feed the people." And Jesus replied, "No, if you had not gone to feed the people, I would have left." God doesn't expect us to be perfect, but he expects us to be growing. Are we struggling to keep growing? Let us support each other in prayer as we do so. God bless.